I thought my 32nd birthday dinner was just another uncomfortable family obligation. I was wrong. Halfway through dessert, my mother, Evelyn, leaned over to my dad and whispered 3 words that chilled me to the bone. "Since everyone's here, have your son changed the locks at her apartment?" She didn't realize my brother, Brandon, overheard her. He didn't ask questions. He just quietly stood up, grabbed his keys, and walked out to follow her orders. Everyone at the table went silent, assuming I was about to be kicked out of a home my mother thought she secretly owned. But an hour later, Brandon walked back into the restaurant. His skin was ghost white, his hands were trembling, and he leaned down to whisper in my mother's ear, "Mom, someone's already inside." Before I reveal what he found, drop a comment below with the city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. My name is Clara Sterling. I'm 32 years old, and until tonight, I thought the hardest part of my life was managing my mother's endless expectations. We were sitting in a quiet, high-end restaurant celebrating my birthday. The ambient lighting was soft, but the tension at our table was sharp enough to cut glass. Beside me sat my father, Arthur, stirring his coffee in uncomfortable silence, and my younger brother, Brandon, who kept his eyes glued to his phone just to avoid the crossfire. Then there was my mother, Evelyn. She sat at the head of the table like a judge delivering a sentence, casually picking at her dessert while tossing passive-aggressive jabs about my career, my lifestyle, and my independence. I'd spent 32 years taking the high road with her, so I just took a slow sip of water and let her words slide. Then came the moment that changed everything. Halfway through the bill being paid, Evelyn leaned toward my father. She thought her whisper was quiet enough for only him to hear, but her cold, venomous tone echoed across the table. "Since everyone's here, have your son changed the locks at her apartment?" Brandon froze. His hands stopped mid-text. He looked at our mother, then at me, the weight of her command hanging in the air. Without asking a single question, Brandon slowly pushed his chair back, grabbed his truck keys from the table, and walked out into the night to carry out her orders. As the restaurant door swung shut behind Brandon, a heavy, suffocating quiet fell over our table. My dad looked down at his napkin, completely spineless, pretending he hadn't heard a thing. But my mother? She just picked up her wine glass, took a delicate sip, and smiled at me with pure, unadulterated triumph. To understand why she looked so self-satisfied, you have to understand Evelyn. My mother believed everything in my life belonged to her. When I turned 25, she helped me put down a small, 5% deposit on a cozy downtown apartment. In her mind, that small contribution meant she held the leash to my entire adult existence. For years, she used that place to keep me under her thumb, constantly threatening to take her property back whenever I didn't fall in line with her demands. What Evelyn didn't know was that I had cut that leash 2 years ago. I had worked late nights, taken on freelance consulting gigs, and pinched every single penny until I paid off her initial contribution with interest, refinanced the mortgage, and placed the title strictly in my own name. I kept it a secret because I knew the moment she realized she lost her leverage, she'd explode. So, as we sat there waiting for Brandon to do her bidding, Evelyn leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with satisfaction. "I hope you brought an overnight bag, Clara," she said, her voice dripping with synthetic concern. "Because after tonight, you'll be living back under my roof where you belong." I just smiled back, letting her enjoy her little fantasy, completely unaware of the storm heading her way. For the next 45 minutes, the atmosphere at the table was suffocating. Evelyn casually ordered a second glass of Pinot Noir, humming softly to herself as if she had just won a war. She made pointed comments about how much easier my life would be once she was managing my affairs again. I didn't say a word. I just watched the front door of the restaurant, waiting for Brandon to return. When the glass doors finally swung open, my brother didn't walk in with his usual cocky, relaxed stride. He practically stumbled through the entrance. His face was completely drained of color, ghost white, like he'd just seen a body. His hands were shaking so violently that his truck keys rattled against each other as he approached our table. Evelyn's smug smile widened. She thought he was coming back to hand her my old keys, signaling that I was officially locked out. "Is it done, sweetheart?" she asked, her voice laced with triumph. Brandon didn't hand her anything. He completely ignored me and our dad, leaning down until his lips were inches from our mother's ear. But he was trembling so hard that his frantic, raspy whisper echoed clearly across the quiet dining room. "Mom," he stuttered, his eyes wide with genuine panic. I tried to put the key in the deadbolt, but the door was unlocked. "Someone's already inside your secret room in her apartment." The satisfaction instantly vanished from Evelyn's face. The color drained from her cheeks, leaving her looking just as pale as Brandon. She didn't look angry at an intruder. She looked terrified. Evelyn practically knocked her wine glass over as she bolted upright, her face drained of every ounce of color. The smug, controlling mother who had been gloating moments ago was gone, replaced by a woman in absolute panic. "We're going." "Now," she barked, throwing a stack of cash onto the table without even checking the bill. We rushed out of the restaurant and piled into 2 cars, speeding down the highway toward my building. My dad kept asking what was going on, but Evelyn sat rigid in the passenger seat, staring straight ahead and biting her nails down to the quick. She wasn't acting like a mother trying to protect her daughter's home. She was acting like a criminal about to be caught. When we reached my floor, the hallway was deathly quiet. Brandon stood near the elevator, pointing a trembling finger toward my door, which sat resting a few inches open. Evelyn didn't wait for us. She shoved past Brandon, pushed the door wide open, and burst into my foyer. My dad and I followed close behind, ready for confrontation with the burglar. Instead, standing in the middle of my living room was a middle-aged man in a rumpled suit, surrounded by open cardboard boxes. I recognized him instantly. It was my mother's estranged half-brother, Uncle Marcus, a man our family hadn't seen in nearly 7 years after he mysteriously vanished following a string of failed business deals. My apartment wasn't just a place to live in Evelyn's eyes. Without my knowledge, she had been using her duplicate key for months, turning my spare walk-in closet into an off-the-books storage space to hide Marcus and thousands of dollars in untraceable family assets away from my father. "Marcus?" my father gasped, stepping into the room, his eyes wide with shock. "What on earth are you doing here? You vanished 7 years ago." Marcus didn't even look ashamed. He dropped a heavy manila envelope onto my coffee table and looked directly at my mother. "She put me here, Arthur. Evelyn's been housing me and using this apartment to stash company documents and off-the-books funds before you 2 finalized your retirement plans." The room went dead silent as the horror of the situation settled in. My father slowly turned to Evelyn, his face shifting from confusion to absolute betrayal. For 30 years, he had trusted her with our family's life savings, completely unaware that she had been siphoning off assets and hiding them in my apartment under the guise of helping her daughter. Then, Marcus looked at me and sneered. "Evelyn found out last week that Clara was listing this place for sale. She knew if Clara sold the apartment, the new owners would clean out the storage closet and find everything. That's why she ordered Brandon to change the locks tonight. She wanted to secure the property and lock Clara out before the truth came out." My mother stood paralyzed, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Her entire scheme was laid bare. She hadn't ordered the lock change to punish me or force me back under her roof out of maternal control. She had done it out of pure, frantic greed to protect her illegal hidden fortune before I could legally sell my own home. And right there, sitting on my coffee table, was all the proof my father needed. For years, I had bowed my head to my mother's endless authority, keeping the peace just to avoid her explosive temper. But as I stood in the middle of my own living room, looking at the absolute chaos and deceit she had brought into my space, something deep inside me snapped. "Get out," I said quietly, my voice holding a steady edge she had never heard before. Evelyn snapped her head toward me, her eyes flaring as she tried to summon her old, commanding presence. "Clara, don't you dare speak to me in that tone. I paid the deposit on this place. You have no right to kick me out." "I paid you back every single cent 2 years ago, Evelyn," I interrupted, pulling my phone from my pocket and holding it up. "I refinanced the mortgage, paid off your initial loan with full interest, and the title is strictly in my name. You have zero legal claim to this property. And right now, you and Marcus are trespassing on private property. I dialed 3 digits and put the phone on speaker, letting the ringing echo off the high ceilings. When the dispatcher answered, I calmly requested immediate police assistance to remove 2 unauthorized intruders who were refusing to leave my residence. Marcus panicked instantly. Realizing the legal trouble he was in, he grabbed an armful of loose files, shoved them into a box, and bolted out the door toward the stairwell without looking back. Evelyn reached out to grab my dad's arm, putting on her best victim act. Arthur, tell her to stop. She's ruining this family. For the first time in 30 years, my father pulled his arm away from her touch. Don't touch me, he said, his voice cold and resolute. Tomorrow morning, I'm hiring a forensic accountant. We're auditing every single joint account and business document you've touched. Brandon stepped back toward the elevator, looking at our mother with absolute disgust. You used me, he muttered, shaking his head in disbelief. You made me do your dirty work. He turned his back on her and stepped into the lift. Evelyn stood entirely alone in the empty hallway as the elevator doors closed, leaving her stranded in the ruins of her own lies. It took 6 long months for the fallout to settle. My dad kept his promise, hiring a top-tier financial forensic team that uncovered millions of dollars Evelyn had secretly siphoned away into offshore accounts over 3 decades. They are currently finalizing their divorce, and for the first time in his life, my father is finally breathing easy and building a peaceful, independent future. Brandon and I have grown closer than ever, completely free from the toxic web of our mother's manipulation. As for me, I listed and sold that downtown apartment just 3 weeks after that fateful birthday night. I took the equity I'd built and purchased a sunlit home near the coast, where I wake up every single morning knowing that every inch of space belongs to me, earned through my own hard work. Evelyn tried reaching out a few times through third parties, begging for forgiveness and financial help, but I changed my phone number and blocked her on every platform. Sometimes, protecting your peace means permanently cutting off the toxic people who helped give you life. Standing up to family is never easy, especially when you've been conditioned to stay quiet for decades. But looking back at that night, taking my power back was the greatest birthday gift I could have ever given myself. Now, I want to ask you, if you found yourself in my shoes and discovered your own mother was secretly using your home to hide a massive financial betrayal, would you have cut ties completely like I did? Or would you have given her one last chance to make things right? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read through as many as I can. And if you enjoyed this story, hit that subscribe button to catch our next upload. Thank you for watching.